G'day everyone, Matt from MileMarker66 here. Hey, we had some really positive feedback from the ProQ video we did a couple of days ago, so we're going to do the same thing again but have a look at the offset this time. I was having a conversation with a good mate yesterday about this actually. There's something really special about cooking on an offset, and I think you get something from cooking on offsets that it's really hard to emulate on other types of barbecues. There's something quite purist about it, I think, where you're cooking meat and you're just using flame as your heat source. So let's break it down and have a little bit of a look at an offset, and then we'll look at some fire management. Now the barbecue we're going to be going over today is the Octopit Backyarder XL. It's a New Zealand made barbecue, and these things are great barbecues. But the things we're going to go over today translate to any offset regardless of brand. And the first thing to consider when you're thinking about maybe buying an offset is it the right barbecue for you? Offset is not a set and forget barbecue. It's not like the ProQ bullets or cabinet smokers where you can set them up and leave them. You do have to tend to them. It is a bit of a labour of love, and you do have to feed them with fuel. If you're someone like me who finds a bit of therapy in sitting by the barbecue all day, then that's not going to be a problem. But you do have to consider that, whether it fits in with your lifestyle and what you want out of a barbecue. There are three main components to an offset barbecue. You've got your firebox, your cook chamber, and your stack. Your firebox is where your heat source is. That's where your fire is going to be. You'll see some offsets that the firebox is on the right hand side, like in this case, and some on the left. It's really just a design feature. It's not going to make any difference to your cook. Your firebox is also where you're going to have your air inlet. So in this case, we've got our air inlet on the door. Other barbecues may have them on the side here as well. Next, we've got our cook chamber. And as the name suggests, that's where we're going to be doing our cooking. So this is where our meat's going to go. In this case, this has got 6 racks, but other barbecues may have different configurations. And finally, our stack, and this is our air outlet. There are two configurations that you're going to find an offset set up as. It's either going to be a direct flow or a reverse flow. Now in a direct flow, your stack is on the opposite side to your firebox. So what that means is that you're going to have a direct draw of air from your firebox across and out the stack. The other configuration, and the way that this is set up, is reverse flow. Now in that case, your heat source or your smoke comes under a series of baffle plates out and then is drawn back across the cook chamber and out the stack. Now the theory is that a reverse flow is going to give you a gentler smoke. The heat source has to take a more tortuous path, and therefore there's not that direct draw on it. Now it's your personal preference which way you go. My personal preference is the reverse flow, but that's really up to you. Let's talk about maintenance of a barbecue quickly, just so we can look after it as best we can. Now you've seen the firebox has got a bit of rust on it here, and that's actually a really hard thing to avoid with offsets. Even with high temperature paint or powder coat, you're cooking with some really high temperatures in there, and as the steel expands, it's going to crack the paint and it is going to flake it off. And I think even if you've got a cover that you keep on it, you're still going to have a hard job avoiding that rust. The only real true way to get around it would probably be to have a double insulated firebox. One thing just to look after it a bit better might be to get a wire brush and give it a scrub once in a while, or even put a bit of an oil coat on it just to protect it and slow down that oxidation process. But like I said, it's going to be very hard to avoid that rust. The other thing to think about when you're maintaining your barbecue is inside the cook chamber. You do get a bit of grease that builds up in there, and you do need to give that a clean out once in a while. The trays slide out, they're pretty easy to clean. You can give them a good clean up after a cook, no problem. But inside, I like to give it a good clean about once a month or so, just to stop that build up getting too out of control. The way that I do it is just get the water blaster out and give the inside a good spray. Another way to do it is that you can buy a food safe or food grade degreaser, give the inside a good spray, let it sit there for a little bit and hose it out. Another consideration when you're cooking on an offset is the fuel you're going to be using. So unlike a kettle or maybe a bullet, you're primarily going to be using wood as your fuel on an offset. So that is something you do need to think about, especially if you're someone who likes to switch between different types of woods for different proteins, because there are quite a range of different fruit woods and hardwoods out there that you can use. So these different woods have different characteristics. Some will burn hotter than others, some will burn longer than others. So it's really getting used to how those different woods behave and what effect that has on how your barbecue runs in terms of how long you can cook and how hot you can cook. Another thing too is, just as a side note, that if you're looking at buying an accessory to go with an offset, I really recommend these kindling crackers. They're really awesome, and they're great for chopping down your wood into manageable sizes for your cook, which we'll touch on shortly when we light it up. There's a number of different ways that you can light an offset. You could use fire starters, or you could use a blowtorch. What I like to do is put down a bed of hot charcoal in the bottom there, and I use that to ignite my wood. The reason I like to do that is because heating up a barbecue from cold, I just feel if I can get a bit more heat in there first, it's going to help bring that up a little quicker. Now, when I put my wood on, I just stack it up. And we're just going to leave that and let that wood ignite. Okay, so you can see that fire's really starting to take now. One thing you would have noticed is the size of the stick that I'm putting on. You really don't need to go too big. I think if you keep them around about this size, it's a really good size. They're going to light really quickly when you put them on. This part, when you're bringing the barbecue up to temperature, it does take a while. With a barbecue like this, it takes a good hour to really bring it up to temperature. So this is where you're really going to go through the most fuel, or burn your fuel the fastest as you bring that up. You'll find once that it gets up to temperature and you've got that good radiant heat, that you're going to go through much less fuel. Okay, so you can see that fire's going really well there. We're coming up to temperature nicely. We're not quite there, but we're pretty close. A really good indication that you're getting there, or you are at temperature, is that you're burning a really nice clean fire. You don't have a lot of white smoke coming out the top of here. You've just got that nice thin blue smoke. Now, temperature control on an offset, what I like to do is I like to keep my vents open. So I've got my top vent here, I keep that wide open, and you see on the bottom vent here, that's wide open as well. And if I want to control the temperature, I just use it by the size of my fire. If I want it to get a bit hotter, then I'm just going to put some more fuel on. Now, how often do you put fuel on? Well, that's going to depend on a couple of things. One, the type of fuel you're using, how fast is it burning? And two, the construction of your barbecue. If you've got something with a thicker steel that's a better construction, it's going to be more efficient, and you're going to have to put fuel on less regularly. Conversely, if you have one that's maybe a bit thinner and not constructed as well, you might find you have to put it on a bit more. But if you can keep the size of your fuel consistent, the regularity at which you're putting it on consistent, and the amount that you're putting on consistent, you should be able to keep a pretty steady temperature throughout your cook. Another little tip you can do as well with your wood that you're going to put on is just chucking it on top of your firebox. It's just going to preheat it a little bit, and when you chuck it in, it's just going to combust a lot quicker than if it were cold. Do be careful with that though, because if you leave it on for too long, it can burst into flames. So you do keep an eye on it, or another option would be to keep it underneath the firebox. You've got a lot of radiant heat coming off there. So there we have it, an introduction to cooking on an offset or an offset barbecue. Now, there are different brands of barbecues, whether you choose to go reverse flow or direct flow. The important takeaway, I think, here is around the fire management. Look, I think if you're consistent with your fuel, how often you're putting it on, how much you're putting on, and the size of the fuel that you're putting on, it's just going to keep that cook as consistent as you can get it, which is just going to help overall with the quality and outcome of your cook. Now, look, we really hope you enjoyed this video. If you've got any questions about offsets or cooking on an offset, or about the Octopit in particular, feel free to fire us a message. We're more than happy to answer anything you might have. And if you enjoy our videos, give us a subscribe and keep up with all our content. Cheers.